In the near future, sinkholes began appearing across the world, causing massive explosions and plunging society into a new state of panic. Giant monsters called refuge emerged from these sinkholes, hunting and killing humans. Bullets could not harm them, and even the military was unable to stop the chaos. Eventually, people living in high-altitude areas discovered that the monsters froze at 8,000 feet. As a result, survivors began moving to higher ground to rebuild their lives. 3 years later, in Colorado, Hunter lived in a small community in the Rocky Mountains. One day, Hunter decided to cross the 8,000-foot safety boundary, curious to see what lay beyond. He had barely taken a few steps when he encountered a reaper. Hunter quickly turned and ran back, with the monster nearly catching him. Fortunately, Hunter made it back to the safety boundary, where the monster could not follow. Hunter then returned home to the Lost Gulch Refuge, where 193 survivors lived. His father, Will, scolded him for crossing the safety boundary, reminding him of the danger posed by the monsters and Hunter's lung condition. Hunter explained that he only wanted to search for more survivors, but Will pointed out that he couldn't bear to lose his son like he had lost his wife. Later, Will went hunting with Katie and shared his worries. Katie understood Will's concerns, but noted that since Hunter was the only child in the community, it was natural for him to want friends to play with. However, Will revealed that Hunter was only trying to return to the last place he had seen his mother. Meanwhile, scientist Nina was experimenting with ammunition, testing it on a piece of reaper skin, but still couldn't cause any damage. That night, Will heard gunfire from Nina's lab and felt uneasy, recalling the moment his wife left with Nina on a special mission that cost her life. Suddenly, Will heard Hunter coughing violently and rushed into his son's room to replace the filter in his respiratory machine. Fortunately, Hunter calmed down and went back to sleep, but it was the last filter in their home. Will stood staring at the map, wondering how difficult it would be to cross the safety boundary to find more filters. On Hunter's birthday, Will tried to locate the last box of mac and cheese in the community to make a special gift for his son. While cooking, Hunter asked why they no longer used the radio. Will explained that they needed to conserve electricity, so they now relied on signal flags to communicate with other refugees. Hunter found this disheartening, as talking to others was so important. Hunter began coughing violently again, and Will had to administer an injection to calm him. After Hunter fell asleep, Will went to see Nina and told her that he would leave for Boulder in the morning to find more filters for his son. He claimed to have found a safe route, but Nina was skeptical, as she knew the area very well. It turned out that Nina's old laboratory was located in Boulder. Will wanted her to come along, because she had spent years studying the refugee and had survived her last journey there. However, Nina reminded him that she only survived by luck, while Will's wife lost her life on that trip. Even so, Will refused to give up and told her about a mine tunnel that cut through the mountain. Nina argued that it was even worse because the refugee could easily set traps inside, and she still refused. After Will left, Nina resumed working on a modified compass, but couldn't stop thinking about Will's wife's death, which brought her to tears. Meanwhile, Will asked a neighbor to look after Hunter, and then visited the gun shop to prepare an arsenal of weapons. Katie unexpectedly appeared and declared that she would join him despite his protests. Eventually, Nina also agreed to come along, but couldn't resist mocking Katie for her lack of experience, claiming she would only be a burden. Before leaving, Will said goodbye to Hunter and promised to return, but Hunter calmly replied that his mother had made the same promise. The trio set out, with Nina maintaining her cold and sarcastic attitude toward Katie, prompting Will to remind her to behave properly. On the way, Nina explained that the refugee emit extremely powerful bioelectromagnetic pulses, and her modified compass could detect their presence. About half a mile in, the group spotted the Elbafire Road, which marked the 8,000-foot boundary. After the compass confirmed no refugees nearby, they crossed the safety limit and began descending. Soon, they came across a few abandoned trucks and searched them for supplies. The group found flares, ammunition, and even a grenade launcher that Katie knew how to use. Nina also discovered a Reaper scale and took some time to collect samples for research. When Katie urged her to hurry, the two got into an argument. Nina sarcastically remarked that Katie just wanted to grab Will's attention. Furious, Katie shoved Nina against the truck and brought up how Nina was responsible for the death of her best friend, who was also Will's wife. The tension escalated, and the two women broke into a fierce fight, forcing Will to step in and separate them before things spiraled out of control. They then continued their journey and were surprised to encounter a herd of horses in the forest. This proved that the refugee only attacked humans for some unknown reason. Eventually, they reached the Alta Vista ski resort, where they planned to use the cable car system to safely reach the mine. Just then, Nina's compass signaled that a creature was approaching, and they saw the trees in the forest shaking violently. Will immediately climbed to the top of the cable car tower and started activating the backup generator, while Nina and Katie stayed on the ground to provide support. Katie panicked as the creature drew closer, firing several grenades that created loud explosions, but did no damage to the Reaper. Will finally completed the generator connection, and Nina quickly flipped the switch before climbing into the cable car seat, where Will quickly joined her. The two of them fired at the approaching creature, while Katie began climbing the tower to reach the seat. The creature jumped onto the cable, taking the seat and forcing Will and Nina to hold on tightly to avoid falling. Katie waited for the right moment to jump into the seat, but unfortunately, she slipped, and Will had to catch her in midair. Nina ran out of ammo just before the creature made the cable shake violently again, causing all three of them to fall straight to the ground. They immediately got up and ran at full speed, barely crossing the 8,000-foot safety boundary before the creature could catch them. As it was getting dark, the group decided to stay overnight at the ski resort and shared a drink to regain their strength. During their conversation, Nina commented that when the refugee appeared, they killed 95% of the world's population without stopping to eat or rest. Predators usually kill to eat, but the refugee were different. They killed humans just for fun and didn't attack any other animals. This made Nina wonder if they had been sent specifically to wipe out humanity. After the two women fell asleep, Will recalled his last conversation with his wife. She had trusted Nina's skills, believing that she would find a way to kill the refugee. The next morning, the group finally reached the mine where Will used to work. He explained that both ends of the mine were above the safe 8,000-foot limit, but the lower levels went deep below that boundary. This made Nina and Katie uneasy, as the tunnels were not properly sealed and the creatures could track them. Moreover, Nina's compass would not work underground. However, since they had come this far, Nina and Katie had no choice but to continue following Will. Wearing helmets with lights attached, the group entered the mine and silently moved for hours. Unfortunately, they had to stop when they discovered that the main tunnel had collapsed due to a landslide. Will stated that they would have to go down to the 7th level, meaning they would have to pass through a section 1,000 feet below the safety limit. Startled by a swarm of bats flying by, the group regained their composure and quickly descended the stairs, entering a new tunnel, and tried to move as fast as possible to avoid trouble. Suddenly, they heard a sound echoing through the tunnel. Quickly, they covered their helmet lights, but it was too late. A refugee had spotted them. The group immediately ran, while Katie fired several grenades to try to slow the creature down. The abandoned machinery in the tunnel partially blocked the refugee path, and Will continued to shoot relentlessly, knowing it was futile. When they discovered a gap in the wall, the group ran inside. Will fired at the surrounding rocks, creating enough space for all three of them to crawl in and hide. The refugee did not give up. It shoved its glowing tail into the hole. Thinking quickly, Will threw a flare to distract it, and the light coincidentally illuminated an escape route on the opposite wall. The group quickly moved the rocks to create a way through. Will went last, trying to avoid the sharp tail of the creature before escaping with his friends. After crawling through the narrow tunnel for a few minutes, Katie was the first to emerge and enter another tunnel. But immediately, she was spotted by another refugee and impaled by its tail. Will rushed to save Katie, but it was too late. He could only helplessly watch as the creature dragged her into the darkness. At that moment, Nina spotted a ladder leading upwards, and the two of them quickly climbed, hearing the growls of the refugee growing closer. Fortunately, they found a door at the top of the ladder and rushed out, escaping the mine just in time to reach a safe elevation. Nina and Will continued their journey without stopping, except for a brief moment to pet a lost goat. As night fell, they found an abandoned house and decided to break in to rest for the night. Inside, they found a few boxes of mac and cheese, Will's favorite dish, which he mentioned Hunter loved. While eating dinner, Will asked Nina about the contents of the old laboratory. Nina explained that she was looking for a chemical that could help bullets penetrate the refugee's scales. She hypothesized that the refugee's scales were electrically charged, and a special bullet could cause an internal burning effect. Will seemed skeptical, thinking it sounded like a nonsensical magic bullet, and reproached her, saying his wife had sacrificed her life for such a flimsy theory. The next day, they found a truck near the house and used it to cross the safety line as quickly as possible. They drove through a town occupied by wildlife, creating a scene that was both peaceful and strange. Finally, they reached the hospital and began searching for the filters. While rummaging through the place, they heard strange noises echoing, but Nina's compass detected no refugee. After a tense search, they reached the top floor and found the necessary filters. They immediately began running to escape the hospital. Suddenly, a refugee burst through the wall, forcing them to move quickly to avoid its massive claws. However, they still bumped into piles of debris while running and were struck by falling fragments whenever the monster destroyed walls or windows. At that moment, the monster's tail broke through the wall and grabbed Will. Nina hurriedly grabbed a fire axe and attacked the tail until the creature released her friend. Then Nina opened a glass canister to create a fog, hoping it would provide some cover for them. An idea flashed in Will's mind. He waited for the refugee to approach, then shot at a series of oxygen tanks. The explosion sent the creature flying through the window. The monster was no longer moving, but they couldn't be sure if it was dead or just unconscious, so they had to leave quickly. Will wanted to go back, but Nina convinced him to help her reach the laboratory so she could finish making the special bullets. After leaving in the truck, the refugee woke up shortly afterward. Eventually, they reached the laboratory, and Nina began mixing chemicals, while Will stood guard near a table. He was stunned when he saw a photo revealing that Nina had a family she had never mentioned. Nina broke down in tears and explained that when the world collapsed, she had been working and couldn't be there for her family. Nina felt an overwhelming sense of guilt because on that day, her son had a soccer match and she had chosen not to go. She also admitted that she hated herself for causing the death of Will's wife, but Will comforted her, assuring her that it wasn't anyone's fault. When Nina finally finished the bullet, she tested it on a piece of the monster's skin, but nothing happened. She told Will to go back to his son while she stayed behind to keep experimenting, hoping to find a solution or at least kill the refugee. Will left in the truck, while Nina tried another formula for the bullet, but it failed again. She was so focused on her work that she didn't realize her compass was reacting. Just then, she heard a noise and realized there was a chemical combination she hadn't tried yet. She hurriedly mixed them together as a last hope. Meanwhile, Will's truck suddenly blew a tire and lost control until it flipped over. Will was unconscious for a moment, but he woke up when he heard the sound of the monster approaching. He had to kick the car window to escape, then started running as the refugee chased him. Climbing the slope became difficult for his body after the crash, and when he was about to cross the safety line, a second refugee blocked his path. Will desperately shot wildly, but to no avail, losing all hope. But just then, Nina appeared and fired her new bullet. A strange explosion occurred, full of smoke and electric charge, confirming her theory. Nina quickly took down all the refugee, destroying them in just a few seconds, even as they tried to flee. She then took a piece of refugee remains and showed Will the mechanical parts, confirming that these monsters were robots programmed to kill humanity. When Will asked who sent them, Nina speculated that it was aliens. Then, when the two returned to the shelter, Will reunited with Hunter, and Nina raised a pirate flag to announce that she had discovered a way to fight back. Soon enough, the survivors gathered to craft tons of special bullets, and Will finally used the radio again to send their message of hope everywhere. Nina also kept the remains of the monsters to continue her research. Once everyone was armed, the survivors entered the forest and killed as many refugees as possible to reclaim the land. One night, Will and Nina looked up at the sky through a telescope and noticed 3 mysterious lights approaching Earth. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Thank you for watching.